I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I want you to answer immediately, without overthinking, without reaching for your phone or the AI sitting on your desk. Here's the first one. If 5 machines produce 5 parts in 5 minutes, how long does it take 100 machines to produce 100 parts? Second, you're in a race and you overtake the person in second place. What position are you in now? Third, lily pads in a pond double in size every day and cover the entire pond in 48 days. How many days does it take to cover half the pond? If you said 100 minutes for the first one, you made the same mistake most people do. The correct answer is 5 minutes. One machine produces 1 part in 5 minutes, and adding more machines doesn't change that. If you said first place for the second one, you fell into the same trap. The correct answer is second. You take the place of the person you overtook, and there's still someone ahead of you. And if you said 24 days for the third, same trap, third time. The real answer is 47 days. If the pond is half full one day before it's completely covered, it doubles to full the very next day. These 3 questions weren't chosen randomly. They come from a test psychologists have used for decades, and they measure the tension between 2 speeds of thought in your brain. On one side, there's a fast, intuitive system, the one that blurts out the first answer. On the other, a slow, deliberate, calculating system. With questions like these, you can't reach the right answer without calling on that second system. And that's exactly what shortcuts skip. Filling in the space where your own thinking should happen with someone else's output, or a machine's. That's why I started with these 3 questions. Their real value isn't in the answers. You know the answers now. But if a similar question with a slightly different shape shows up tomorrow, you'll probably still pause. Because knowing the answer is one thing. Having trained the mental muscle that gets you there is something else entirely. Later in this video, we'll see that this difference has 2 paths and 1 trap. Whether you're a student or a knowledge worker, this gap will keep showing up in front of you whenever AI is in the room. And that third question, by the way, is a compressed version of a story that's 1,500 years old. In an ancient Indian legend, the wise man Sissa presents the game of chess to his king. The king is so delighted, he tells Sissa to name any reward he wishes. Sissa makes a request that sounds almost embarrassingly modest. He asks for 1 grain of wheat on the first square of the chessboard, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, doubling with each square all the way to the 64th. The king laughs. This is what you want? This little thing? He sends his vizier to do the math. 18 quintillion grains of wheat. More than all the wheat humanity had ever produced, and far more than the entire royal treasury could cover. The man who invented chess clearly knew how to collect his reward. And even a king, if he's prone to fast thinking, if he doesn't engage the slow, calculating part of his brain, can't feel the weight of exponential growth. Because the human brain always prefers the shortcut, it wants to jump to the conclusion. It treats the process as a burden to be dropped. I'm not going to tell you it isn't a burden. It is. But just like in that story, I'm going to use the chessboard to show you which burdens are worth carrying and which ones are worth offloading. Because cheating alone doesn't quite capture what's really at stake here. Cheating is the breaking of an agreement, and if there's no agreement, there's no cheating. School has such an agreement. You're given an assignment, asked a question on an exam, and told, do this on your own. Because at the end of the day, what's being measured is you. The goal isn't just the answer, it's learning how to reach it. But once you graduate and step into professional life, things start to shift. Nobody there is measuring you, they're measuring your output. The client looks at the report. Someone watches the presentation and evaluates the result. In software, they run the code and check whether it works. Process matters less, outcome matters more. Because companies exist to create value. That's why in professional life, the question, is using AI cheating, largely loses its meaning. Nobody asks an accountant to calculate tax returns with pen and paper anymore. The calculator became an extension of their work decades ago. An architect uses AutoCAD. A knowledge worker builds tables in Excel. A doctor doesn't inspect every pixel of an MRI by hand. Tools are extensions of you, and refusing to use a tool isn't a virtue. It's just a choice to work slower. But some tools, without you noticing, start to lull you to sleep on the wrong side of an invisible wall. There's a real risk of sleepwalking. We'll talk about what that risk actually looks like, and about a second agreement that hides beneath the surface. The agreement you make with yourself. But first, a short break. Now back to that second invisible agreement. A student's real preparation for life isn't just submitting a piece of paper. It's building something inside themselves in the process. Learning how they think when they write. discovering what decisions they make when constructing their own sentences. These are invisible processes. They don't appear on any diploma, but they are exactly what gets tested in the real world. Think about lifting weights. You might bleed and sweat for it, but when you lift it with your own strength, the muscle that grows is yours. What happens if someone else lifts the weight for you, or a machine does it? 10 kilos get lifted 10 times. Process disappears, only the result remains. Finding an idea and letting it mature works the same way. It requires the mind to make an effort to go through that struggle. If you need to write in order to clarify your own position on something, you write. If you need to stand up and speak in front of people, you speak. If you outsource those things to AI, the muscle that makes independent decisions slowly atrophies. Your instinct for recognizing a badly written paragraph fades. Your ability to sense when someone is talking nonsense quietly slips away. The real danger of AI isn't that it works alongside you, it's that it becomes you. That's why, am I cheating? Is the wrong question. The right question is, what am I trying to become? The clearest everyday example of this is sitting in our pockets. You may have heard of London's black cab drivers, people who spend 4 years memorizing more than 25,000 streets across the city. Brain scans have shown that their hippocampus, the region responsible for memory, is measurably larger than that of the average person. If you live in the same city and you're not a cab driver, what do? You use Google Maps. Someone who drives for 40 years that way won't see that part of their brain grow. Is using Google Maps cheating? No. Is it bad? No. But a muscle isn't being trained. The question is whether that muscle is one you actually need in your life. If you want to drive a black cab in London, you'll need to build it. There's a famous experiment that gives concrete evidence for this point. In the 1970s, researchers put a chess master and a beginner side by side. Both were shown a chessboard for just 5 seconds. 16 pieces were arranged on it, a logical mid-game position from a real match. The master recalled the positions of almost every piece with near-perfect accuracy. The beginner, as you might expect, remembered only 4 or 5. Then came the second phase, and this is where it gets striking. The pieces were rearranged randomly, with no regard for game logic. And this time, the chess master could remember only a handful, just like the beginner. Because the master wasn't memorizing individual pieces. He was seeing patterns, configurations built up over years of play at the board. Thousands of games had given him the ability to recognize an arrangement as a whole. Knowing, in this sense, is recognizing. And recognition requires having accumulated those patterns inside your mind. You place one piece of knowledge on the first square, 2 on the second, building connections at every step. If instead of moving through those squares one by one, you simply take the answer from somewhere else and skip straight to square 64, you might end up with a large pile of wheat, but you won't know how to manage it or where it came from. Let's stay with chess and go to one of the most historic moments in the game. On May 11th, 1997, in New York, a man and a machine sat across a chessboard. Garry Kasparov resigned in the 6th game against IBM supercomputer Deep Blue in just 19 moves. I've never forgotten the expression on his face as he rose from his chair, the look of a man feeling the weight of the moment humanity lost to a machine. He later said he lost his fighting spirit. Chess, long considered the purest fortress of human intelligence, had been conquered by a computer. IBM retired Deep Blue that same day. 29 years have passed since that match, and today the chess engines on our phones are 1,000 times more powerful than Deep Blue. I wasn't a strong enough player at the time to fully grasp the magnitude of what was lost that day. But I understand it much better now. Because AI has become expert at writing, at completing assignments, at answering whatever you throw at it. The machine can now do your work faster than you can imagine. So do we give up? Kasparov didn't. After that defeat, he had a realization. If a machine can beat a human, what kind of force could a human and a machine together create? Drawing inspiration from a mythological creature, half human, half horse, he called this advanced chess. We call that creature a Centaur, half human, half machine. In a freestyle chess tournament held in 2005, something unexpected happened. Supercomputers and grandmasters competed, but the winners were 2 amateur players using the pseudonym Zach, playing on ordinary laptops. They defeated both Hydra, one of the most powerful chess computers of the time, and Grandmaster Vladimir Kramnik. Those who analyzed the result later explained it this way. A weak human, a machine, and a good process together proved superior to a very powerful machine alone. They were even better than a strong human and a machine operating with a poor process. This is another lens through which to look at the question, is using AI cheating? What's your intention? You can say 2 very different things to AI. If you say, give me the answer, that's cheating. it kills the process. But if you say, teach me how to do this, that's partnership. That's becoming a centaur. One makes you passive, the other puts you on the back of something far more powerful than either of you alone. How do you make this distinction in practice? There's a simple filter. First, ask yourself, do I need to actually learn something from this task? If a similar task comes up tomorrow, will I be expected to handle it on my own? If the answer is yes, AI should be your coach, not your player. Then ask, can I still judge what the AI gives me? Can I tell whether it's good, bad, or missing something? If you can't, you've become the tool of your tool. That's not a technical problem, it's a positioning problem. Back when the internet was just starting to spread, there was a restaurant owner sharp enough to put a sign in his window to attract tourists. Chicken translation. He clearly used the computer, the copy-paste is obvious, but he couldn't judge the result. When you're using AI and wondering whether you're crossing a line, remember that sign. This filter applies beyond students. A teacher in a classroom, a parent looking at their child's homework, the same question holds. The measure is always the same. Is your judgment still in the loop, or has the AI's authority quietly taken your place? In 2023, a study was published that drew a sharp line around exactly this boundary. Ethan Mollick from Wharton, working with Boston Consulting Group, participated in the largest pre-registered experiment on the future of knowledge work conducted up to that point. 758 consultants were given 18 different tasks for a fictional shoe company. Creative writing, analysis, marketing, you name it. AI access was assigned randomly. And even in 2023, when AI was still in its early stages, those who used it completed more tasks, worked faster, and produced work that was, on average, 40% higher in quality. Being a centaur made a measurable difference in knowledge work. But the story gets more complex. BCG designed one additional task specifically where AI couldn't reliably provide the right answer. The researchers noted in the report that AI appeared so capable, they struggled to find a scenario where humans would outperform it. But in this one task, designed around AI's blind spots, those who didn't use AI solved the problem correctly 84% of the time. Among those who used AI, the success rate dropped to around 60%. The people without AI outperformed the people with it. The researchers called this phenomenon automation bias, falling asleep at the wheel. In a related study, recruiters using high-quality AI gradually became more passive over time, grew less skilled in their own judgment, and missed certain strong candidates entirely. They were making worse decisions than those who used low-quality AI or none at all. When AI is very good, people lose the reason to stay alert. Instead of managing the tool, they hand over control. This is the trap. The researchers gave this invisible boundary a name, the Jagged Frontier. Picture a castle wall. Some towers jut outward, while others curve back toward the interior. That wall is AI's capability boundary, and inside it, AI performs flawlessly, while just outside it, it makes errors you won't see coming. Chicken translation is a blunt example, but the principle stands. The two sides of that boundary look close to each other, but they're in completely different places. AI can only produce the average of averages. It can't roam the edges. There are two ways to navigate this boundary. The first is to become a centaur, to strategically divide the work between human and machine, to be able to say, this part is mine, this part is the machine's. Like using a calculator, like using Google Maps to find your way. The second is to become a cyborg, not in the physical science fiction sense, but as an approach. A way of working where you start a sentence and the AI completes it, where you constantly move back and forth across the boundary. You knit one stitch, the machine knits the next. But becoming a cyborg carries a hidden cost. In a state of flow, this is exactly where your attention slips most easily. You can no longer tell, after the fact, which lines were yours and which were the machine's. Imagine two chefs at the same stove, both stirring the same pot. One adds salt while the other adds spice, and dinner turns out delicious. But the actual arithmetic of the dish gets lost. The day you're standing at that stove alone, you'll be left saying, chicken translation. Neither the recipe nor the intuition of how those flavors came together will be inside you anymore. And there's an unwritten third path sitting between the two, handing the work entirely to the AI and walking away, falling asleep at the wheel. When your intention shifts from teach me to do it for me, you've broken your own agreement. You turn in the paper and you leave the mental muscle weak. You lose twice. Maybe the most important skill for navigating modern life will be this: knowing when and how to hand off the cognitive load. Humanity has always done this, offloading cognitive weight throughout history. When writing was invented, when Sumerian cuneiform spread across the ancient world, scholars in ancient Greece warned that writing would create forgetfulness in people, that instead of drawing knowledge from within themselves, they would become dependent on external marks. When calculators entered classrooms in the 1970s, math teachers argued that children would lose the ability to compute, and they were all right. Writing changed the way we remember. The calculator reduced the practice of doing arithmetic by hand. Was that good or bad? It was a trade. Scientists call it cognitive offloading. The real question isn't what load you carry, it's which load you choose to drop, and which muscle you choose to stop training. In the age of AI, this trade requires far more care, because what might atrophy this time is your judgment itself. Even if we assume we're using AI correctly, with the right intention, purely as a tool, is there still a danger lurking? Yes. Scientists call it cognitive atrophy, the withering of an organ that goes unused. AI always offers an average correctness because it speaks from the common denominator of everything that's ever been uploaded to the internet. When an original and deeply considered piece of writing goes in and comes out as something smooth but hollow, the loss isn't immediately visible. But as copies are generated from those copies and they fill the internet, as the system feeds endlessly on its own mediocrity, the text may still look polished on the surface, while emptying out inside. It becomes a photocopy of a photocopy. And there's that word again, copy. Cheating, in this deeper sense, is genuinely destructive, because it kills expertise. If we each step back from our own domains of knowledge, assuming the machine knows better, the shared pool of human understanding starts to dry up. While preparing this video, I came across a documentary, and honestly, that story was what made me build all of this around the spine of chess. At the 2022 Sinkfield Cup, 19-year-old Hans Niemann defeated world champion Magnus Carlsen. Carlsen withdrew from the tournament and implied cheating. Niemann's online rating had shot up from below 2,000 to 2,700 in a very short time, but when he sat at a physical board, he still moved like the older, weaker player because the mental muscle hadn't been built. Meanwhile, Carlsen was also working with AI, specifically AlphaZero, but treating it not as an answer machine, but as a teacher. Two people, the same tool, completely different outcomes. One was cheating, the other was writing. This also reveals something about AI that I find quietly uncomfortable. People call it a great leveler. It has a way of bringing everyone to the same surface. People who couldn't use punctuation correctly yesterday are suddenly posting polished paragraphs online. AI is doing for those with lower skill what it learned from those with higher skill. It brings them to the same level. But don't be fooled by appearances. The people typing, "Write this for me," without thinking it through themselves, the moment they sit down at the board in the real world, they can't string two sentences together. In my view, this is the most revealing filter of all. When you're tempted to take a shortcut, think about which part of yourself you're actually leaving weak. At the very start of this video, I asked you 3 questions, and I gave you the answers right away. You know those answers now. But when a question with a similar logic, but a slightly different shape shows up tomorrow, if you haven't developed the muscle for recognizing the pattern from the inside, you'll pause in exactly the same way. Tomorrow you'll wake up and find yourself in front of the same AI, the same interface, the same prompt box waiting for you. But you can approach it with a different intention. You can be there to swallow the answer, or to lift the weight with your own hands. The point isn't to shed every burden. It's not to avoid slow thinking. It's to know which burdens are the ones that make you stronger. While you think you're deceiving the people around you, you might actually be deceiving your own future. The wheat on the 64th square can only be won through a game you built yourself, through connections you made, one square at a time.